Here we are. It's been a while since we've recorded an episode. We've got a couple lined up, but today I am super excited. Feels like everything's been training for this. This won't be an ultra marathon episode. We'll try to keep it to a regular standard duration. But my name's Uri Schneider. And exciting to have my friend Greg Pandise as a guest for today. Good morning, Greg.
Morning. How we doing?
We're doing good.
Good to be
We're
here.
doing good because I got some exercise in this morning. I knew we were going to be talking. I wanted to be sharp.
I haven't got a chance to check Strava yet, so I'll make sure to give you some kudos
I
when
appreciate the
I'm back online
encouragement.
today. Yeah.
Listen, some of us run on Duncan. I run on Greg Pandice likes on Strava. Um, Hopefully we're going to get in that, exotic run sometime in the next 12 months or so. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just jump right in. Greg is awesome. Greg, I'll read his formal bio and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Greg is a really extraordinary human being. That's not in his bio, but Greg is a person who stutters. He's a sales professional in financial services and a former college athlete, lacrosse, uh, and other things. When he's not working, he enjoys training for ultra marathons, ultra running, triathlons, doing indoor activities, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Don't mess. He also enjoys finding a good book to read and coaching lacrosse. He's a person who stutters since he was young, and he has experiences with speech therapy in his early years, even through teenage and adult life. He is grateful for everything stuttering has taught him and uses the lessons learned to deal with adversity, achieve his goals, and foster positive mental attitude. Loves staying involved in the stuttering community, works with a couple of nonprofits, and he's active in mentoring, and we're grateful to have him as a mentor in Transcending Stuttering. And I would also add that Greg's examples, both in some of the work that we've done together and also how he has put stuttering on the table at work and leveraged the way he tells his story, has been dripped into the SLP training cohorts and workshops that we've been doing around the world. So you've left a very significant impression on us and on many people. So appreciate you sharing. So it's a big treat to have you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what's something you'd want people to know that's not on the resume?
Something I'd want people to know is that um is something more in the weeds is that not all that stuff is kind of easy or fun at times, kind of stuff that I listed that I do when I'm not working. I think that's okay. I think that's okay. But it helps me kind of keep a balance in my life. Um, and then I know you and I have definitely talked about this, something a little bit more kind of normal. I love to cook. I love to make food. I love to take care of people. Um, so I think from playing sports my whole life, I kind of always had to have like the right food to recover and things like that. And so kind of got into cooking. My mom's a great cook. Um, my dad can cook as well. So always got to be taking care of yourself.
So on a selfish note, since this is like R&D for me as well, what's your go-to recovery food or recovery drink? How does Greg Pandice recover after a 50K?
My go-to recovery and this might be controversial. This is kind of out there. I drink a little bit of like salt water, so to get my sodium back up, and then I eat basically everything and anything, but I always try to get in like some sort of rice, like white rice is kind of my go-to. Like it's easy on the stomach, it's easy to eat a lot of, can help me get back out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just to give people a taste of what Greg's talking about, that none of that stuff is easy, in case you thought this was easy. So I was I was checking at the Wawa Yanda State Park in New Jersey. Greg did a 50K. That's longer than a marathon. He also just did the Philly Marathon. What was it, in 3 hours and 30 something minutes?
3:33.
3:33. So just for anyone out there who's not a runner, just picture running a pretty fast clip for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 hours and 33 minutes. That's incredible. And he did this 50K, which was on trails, was not street running, was not flat. He placed second overall. That was 6 hours and 34 minutes. Just to give you a sense of what Greg puts himself through. And something Greg said to me that I just a few days ago before we set this up, you said something about you appreciate and want to have a life where work is not the most challenging thing in your life.
Yeah.
Want to just share on that? What that seemed like a really valuable thing.
Yeah. And I think comes back to having like a work life, a balance. You know, the last thing I want to do, and I'm lucky that, I have a job that I really like. But the last thing I want to do is be going into the office and being like, ugh, like I gotta grind right now. But I feel like if I do things outside of that that are hard, one of those is right, dealing with my speech, right? Another thing is, more, physical, whether that's, running, biking, doing all of those things. And when I get to work, it can be more of like a medium volume. I'm not saying I'm not working hard, but just comparatively. And sometimes it can even be, a relief to be able to get to the office and just sit down and not have to be doing all those things. So really just that work-life balance.
Truly inspires me. People sometimes have this idea that I do things and pack in a lot. But I look to people like you and I'm like, if this guy can have the job that he has and do the training and the endurance and the recoveries that you do, I can find the time too. And all of us can kind of lead others and also find people that we can follow. But we're recording this at 6:30 in the morning. Greg's not sitting at home twiddling his thumbs. So if you want to carve the time, early morning is definitely the time of champions for those that can pull it off. So let's jump right in, man. What was it like growing up? What were some of those early memories or early experiences as a kid growing up with a stutter?
Yeah, I think some of my earliest memories, stuttering came in like third or fourth grade. Most of those were around, and for the people who stutter who are listening, was reading in class. Like we'd go around the class, we'd all read like a page or something. And that was not easy. But another thing that's kind of weird is I was talking to, a really old friend. I've known him since I was basically born, right? And he kind of made like a joke one day. He was like, yeah, when you were a kid, like you were like hilarious and like you couldn't say anything. Like you would just like try to get these words out. And that must have been when I was like, call it 4 or 5. So that was something that I learned, call it when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't have a memory of that. And to me, that says that, we're, at least me personally, like people's reactions were really more of the issue than maybe my communication skills. But I mean, that can kind of take a toll on you after many years, people's reactions, especially if they're fairly consistent, it can almost rewire you to be, expecting something or to think, um, that there's something inherently wrong with what you're doing. And
Also,
yeah. No, I was going to say it took me a while to kind of, unlearn that. And get to where I am.
What was the unlearning? Because I was struck how you said that only that friend later on telling you, oh man, you remember when you were little? Like we used to laugh, and you don't have that memory. You don't have a conscious memory of that. Is it that you blocked it out, or you think it just didn't hit you? You had some sort of Teflon.
No, I think it was more um like I was, 4 or 5, didn't know that I was stuttering, and no one ever said anything to me about it. So I wouldn't know, right? I mean, yeah, I might be able to, realize I was talking a little bit differently, but I mean, if you went through the world and you were stuttering and no one reacted differently or said anything to you, you'd be like, ah, cool, you know. So
Totally.
I think that's more what I was getting at.
How did family? You grew up. You grew up with mom, dad, siblings.
Yeah, I
How
had
they?
two, and this is another thing. I had two older sisters, both, very confident, very smart. And I think my dad brought this up when I was kind of going through speech therapy with you. But he said, "Oh yeah, it's kind of weird. His sisters used to like always kind of like talk for him, just from their, personality. Like, hey, Greg, we're going to the store. Like, we're gonna, go and get lunch. Like, I'm gonna order for you, or this is what oh, we have to do this. Okay, like I'm gonna make that phone call. So maybe that also had something to do with it. And maybe that's why I didn't notice or have a memory of, maybe stuttering at a younger age.
In hindsight, looking back now, you feel that was you appreciated that that was helpful, or you look back and you kind of wish they hadn't done that.
In hindsight, I'd wish they hadn't have done that. Um, just kind of, you know, get to do what, you know, wanted to do sooner, or, realize there was something to fix a bit sooner. But
Did they order the sandwich you wanted? At least
I was you did not know me back then, but I was quite the handful. So if they did not order the sandwich I wanted, I'm sure everyone in the entire restaurant would know.
well, I didn't know you then, but I do know you're very particular about your sandwiches. Uh, I've shared this before. I have you to thank for my teaching me how to brew my own iced coffee at home, cold brew overnight. And
Yeah,
if I ever attempt making an avocado toast, I have you on my mind.
absolutely.
Um, cool. So what was the first time you engaged in speech therapy? Like when did that become part of Greg's life?
Yeah, I think it wasn't really speech therapy, but it was like kind of like what seemed like reading, writing, like kind of like extra help sort of thing.
So
I
like
think my
a
parents,
school kid who was a handful, getting
yeah,
some help with.
no, but like my sisters went with me because my parents didn't want me to like go by myself, right? But the real like formal speech therapy, I would say, probably maybe like 6th or 7th grade, and
Any
that was,
standout memories? What was something that was helpful, or what was something that was unhelpful or annoying?
yeah, I do remember specifically there was one guy, and he actually came to my house, um, and he was talking about like tapping my foot as I spoke to like keep a cadence or like keep a rhythm, or like tapping on my leg and doing stuff like that. And there's nothing, if that works for you, that works for you. But for me, I was like, I don't really want to be tapping all the time. And so for him, like that's where the road ended. It was like, all right, it's either you want to tap or nothing's gonna get better.
So
um,
he had one. He was a shoe salesman selling one shoe, and the shoe didn't
yeah,
fit, so it was like a
yeah,
non-starter.
yeah, yeah. And then I think I really started and there was a couple others probably pretty similar to that, maybe one other kind of put on hold. And then I think in high school I saw some, pretty legit speech therapists. One very kind of from the physical school of thought, so techniques, and then the other, the polar opposite, right? No speech techniques, all kind of confidence mindset, accepting that you stutter, and then also accepting that that's something that can't change.
And
And
those went further. Those were deeper,
mhm,
longer.
yeah, those were, one of them was probably close to a year of consistent, probably by probably bi-weekly. But like both of those, it was like, it was difficult for me to buy in completely to either of them. I was bought in, right? I was doing the work, but um, just didn't 100% click. Like it seemed like with one side, it was like, okay, accept that you're never gonna improve. Like I couldn't really do that. Like you kind of know my personality. Like a lot of the reasons why I do all this, stuff outside of work is because I love to improve. I love to learn new things. And even starting something brand new, like that's the most fun because you can learn the most, you can improve the quickest. Like I was training for a triathlon this summer, my first swim workout ever. I literally swam for 5 minutes and I was completely gassed. I was like, whoa, I don't know how I can get through this. But then, like 2 weeks, I could swim for like 30 minutes. I just had to learn technique a little bit, pacing, breathing. And so, in like, 10 days, I improved like, 90%. So that's like the fun part. And then when you do something for a really long time and, it's harder and harder to get better, that's kind of where people get burnt out, maybe.
I think that's so
So
true in everything,
yeah.
like, but it also speaks to your personality, which we'll get to. And I think talking about fitness and training, because some of us would go like, great, I'm going to do a triathlon. That's my like 2023 goal. And I'm just going to go for my first swim and see like what I can crank out. And you go and like after 5 minutes, you're gassed and you're like, okay, new goal. I think we're going to go to the Bahamas in 2023, you get knocked out of the water like that, but you look at it as like, yes, challenge, I'm leaning in, and I think that's important, certainly in meeting you the first time and recognizing I was meeting someone who knows how to work, who knows how to do hard things. So that wasn't going to be the hard thing. The hard thing was, how do I meet you where you're at and give you what you need, and not teach you to tap your feet if that's not what you want to do, unless you want to do tap dancing together. um Two things that came to mind. One is I just today saw on LinkedIn, Gary Vaynerchuk. They asked him, "How do you balance between satisfaction and staying hungry?" And he said something very nuanced, which you just reminded me. And what you said, he said he doesn't like the word satisfaction, or he wants to add a little more subtlety there. He said, "I think you need to be grateful and never be jealous of what other people have." And that's part one, and being grateful and appreciating what you have, appreciating what you've done in whatever measure you have, and not being jealous of looking at how much other people may have different than you. And then the second part is staying hungry, staying ambitious. It doesn't contradict having gratitude, but it's these two things at once. And I think that's what I think of you. That's what I think of. It's like appreciation, gratitude, humility. I won't say what I've said to you privately, but I think your humility is extraordinary given your accomplishments. And at the same time, the hunger to go further. And if someone wants to see about swimming, what Greg just said, if you're a person who wants to do open water swimming or any swimming and you're like not cracking it, Tim Ferriss has a TED talk on that where he talks about accelerated learning and getting over the fear of water and fear of swimming in particular. So if you're looking to crack that, check out the Tim Ferriss TED talk. We'll try to put that in the show notes. That's really powerful. So you're talking about having different therapists, and when they were leaning all in, either one of them was on the speech mechanics and strategies and techniques to kind of control the stutter and to speak smoother. You were compliant, but something didn't feel like the perfect fit suit. And then you had another therapist that was all in on acceptance and the emotions and the confidence. And also you were all in. And at the same time, it didn't feel like it was exactly the right fit. And then disclosure, right? We met at some point. What was it like when we first met? Do you remember that feeling of like wanting to do something new, but also feeling skeptical? It's like the big reveal with Glenn to
Yes.
open up what you really felt coming in that day.
Yeah. So what I think I felt was, and I obviously wouldn't realize this at the time, it probably looked like to kind of take another. We're good.
My connection got zapped. So right when
Okay.
you started talking, I lost you, but
Okay.
you can carry forward unless you want to back up and say that again.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. We can start again. Yeah. So when I first went in to see you, from the outside looking, you probably would have seen someone who seemed skeptical, who seemed like they didn't want to be there. What I really was someone that wanted to improve, um, was someone who was insecure, wanted to change their mindset and kind of change their life. But I was probably afraid of having to break myself down to then build back up. It was like, okay, I gotta go speech therapy and I gotta talk about, my speech and how tough this is and kind of go through like, all the struggles I have so we can work through them. And I don't think for anyone, that's really easy the first time. I think like you kind of said a minute prior, I think that's kind of more of a skill that you learn, right? Realizing that, when you're afraid of things or when you feel like something's going to be hard, kind of leaning into that. And
Well, I can definitely concur. You
that's
didn't
the
make it
courage
easy.
muscle.
There you go. Shout out to Dan. Courage
Yeah.
muscle. Look, yeah, it wasn't easy. You walked in, and I knew you were a very accomplished college lacrosse player. And let's just say, I think you have broader shoulders than I do, even without your pads. And like you're all business. You come in with this like all business face that I couldn't read one way or the other. You'd driven what, like an hour and a half on a Sunday
Yeah,
morning or
probably.
something. And here we were set up for like this intensive situation. So we were going to sit together for like 2 hours, take a lunch break, and then another 2 hours. It was, once you were in, we were in this to win this. And I was in it to win it. But yeah, it took a lot of courage for me, just like full disclosure for the therapist or for people who stutter, for parents to know. I think it's important for the therapist to come in humble and a little bit unsure, like having the faith that you could show up, but having the humility to recognize like this is a new human being you've never met. And that's the true story. But we hung in, and I think the key with you and with everyone is always looking for that feedback. How we doing? How we doing? 1 to 10. What's going well? What are you liking? What could be better? I remember asking you that because I would tell these stories or jokes, and sometimes they didn't seem to land. And I'd be like, too many stories, too many jokes. You like the stories, you don't, but we got to adapt. We got to adapt to get that fit. Lately I talk about therapy. It should be like a custom made suit. It shouldn't be like taking something off the shelf and trying to get your body. I don't know about you, Greg. You might have the same problem. I try to find anything I can to be similar to you. Do you have thunder thighs, like compared to the rest of your body? Do you find that pants are tight? We don't have to get into like wear, but
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
totally.
Yeah.
It's like
My
a chronic problem.
like my waist on my pants is like massive. It's like
Really?
a few inches too big because I gotta find them to fit my thighs.
Oh, right. No, I'm with you. Right. You got to get the pants that don't fit at the waist because otherwise the cut on the thighs it's not possible. It like doesn't
Yeah.
go. So I have that problem. And people are always like, oh, why don't you just get pants here, get pants there? I'm like, if only you knew. But listen, these are everybody's got their thing. You just wouldn't imagine or think of it. But when you work out like Greg, suddenly your body changes in interesting ways that are both fit but also make clothing particular. Anyway, so what stands out from what evolved? What do you remember evolving? What do you remember shifting as you came in kind of apprehensive? You wanted to make things happen, but you also had this apprehension. You don't really want to get all messy and kind of deconstruct. It's a very messy, scary, and I think another thought people have, I have if I'm a client, do I want to take everything apart? Will this person be able to help me put myself back together? I gotta walk out of here and have a couple days in between our meetings. I don't want to be fully in shambles. So it's a big
Hmm.
trust thing in oneself and the therapist. What do you remember evolving in the work?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of touch on how I was feeling in the beginning again and then where I went from there, but I think trust is a big thing. And going in with prior experiences, I'm like, okay, this guy is gonna like tell me what to do, and he's gonna say that he like understands and all this stuff. Uh, um, and I had kind of like an opposite experience, right? Like you just said, you're constantly checking in for like feedback, which was kind of refreshing. Um, and 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 I felt like you you kind of let me drive to a certain extent,
To a large extent, mostly
to all of the
90,
extent, yeah,
99%.
99% of it, yeah.
Well, it was a different neighborhood. So when you were ready to order lunch, like I recommended where would be a good place to get an avocado toast. But otherwise, I let you run the show.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so for someone who was, you know, to keep it short, right, didn't really want to be there.
Let's just keep it short. Didn't want to be there.
Having someone kind of allow you to, you know, kind of drive and control what you want to do with the time that you were there, that made it a lot easier to stay there and to, come back the next few times.
I always wondered if you'd come back.
Same.
But it's all the more scary letting someone drive when you're not sure if they even know how to drive, want to drive, or if they're gonna like hit the eject button, kick you out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a risk.
and what did you find most helpful? What stands out as like a memory of something that was valuable to you? Because for sure there was stuff. For example, the avocado toast, we could joke about it. The iced coffee, we could joke about it. But that was trust. That was relationship. That wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't a shtick. It was genuine regard for you as a person who had something to teach me. I didn't think I had a fiddlestick and you were going to teach me lacrosse on the spot. I would have loved that. But I found something that I could connect with you because in many ways, I don't come from your world, but I had to work hard to figure out where can I meet you where you're at. So that food and that stuff was a connecting point. I don't think that was the biggest value for you. So like, I'm wondering what stands out as like the most valuable part of the work or the value part of the experience.
Yeah, so the most valuable part of the work was learning my goals and what I needed, right? And you know this, I can guarantee that's different for, each person that you work with.
That's right.
And then being able to work backwards from there. Okay, well, you want to be more confident. So that's more of, the mental side. But you also want to be able to say these words and say these sounds. So let's learn, a couple of speech techniques that you can use in a pinch. Right. And it was in a way that there was no pressure to be perfect, either way. So there was no way to really fail because it wasn't this like objective kind of grading system. I wasn't sitting there thinking, okay, I have to, do this technique perfectly, or I have to think this way completely. It was really just, improving and just getting to a place where I was comfortable. It's the same thing with learning how to swim or learning how to swim, for a race, right? If I went out there and was like, cool, I have to swim this time no matter what, and I can't hit that, then I'm a failure, right? But if I just start swimming and go, okay, I just want to improve. I just want to be able to, be okay and be able to do it enough where I can go weekly and hit the pool, like, then I'm a winner because I can do that when I'm not putting big constraints on myself.
I want to come back to that because in the email you sent me before this, you talked about how to use stuttering and becoming a consistent winner, which I think is really powerful. What you just said, so for non-Strava subscribers, it's free,
Which
by
you
the way.
should be, which you should
That's
be
right.
on Strava.
That's
If
right.
you're not,
That's right.
delete Instagram and get on Strava.
There you go. You heard it there first. Greg Pandise tells you get off Instagram. So if you're watching this on Instagram, get right off it. Get on Strava. That's where all the fitness people are. If you don't know what Strava is, S like Sam, Trava. I don't have any affiliate or anything like that, but it's basically, it's a very encouraging and very real. There's no faking. It tracks your stuff. And then if you choose to, it's very selective in terms of you can choose to share with certain people or not be visible, but it's encouraging doing fitness with other people. And Greg and I talked about this. I haven't figured out the details, but I think creating a virtual running club and maybe having an end target of like a race for those of you that are not ready for a 50K ultra marathon. I think we'll start with a 5K, but I think we're going to get to this, the value and the role of fitness in life and what it does for life, what it does potentially for a person who stutters, for some people, not for everybody, but certainly Greg is someone who feels there's a lot of value there. But I wanted to ask you, Greg, you're a finance guy. You were an NCAA athlete. You're not a fluffy guy. I wouldn't say you came in as like fuzzy kumbaya. You were very goal oriented and metric oriented. So I'm curious when you're saying what you're saying now about it's important not to set like the metrics of success too rigid. On the other hand, I'm thinking many people feel like, well, if you don't have that, like how do you measure success? And I know that you're interested in that, and that was part of your experience. What was that? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think the big change came when I started measuring success in the process. So instead of being like results driven, be process driven. So, you know, is my, you know, is my swim time this? No. Is that the end of the world? No, because I'm doing all the right things, right? I'm, doing this, technique practice. I'm getting time in the pool. So like that's how you got to measure it, because it's not going to come immediately. And then, if it doesn't come, are you even doing anything? You're just going to sit there and think that you're a loser. Like, I think about this in sales constantly. This is the way that I work, right? As long as I'm doing all of the right things, right, the sales will come. I can't sit there and be like, okay, I need to hit this number on this day, because one, I can do all of the wrong things and that might happen.
Mhm.
Right? I might get lucky. I might swing backwards and hit a home run. Um, and then two, I can't replicate that. There's like no consistency to it. So was I even doing anything, or was I just doing stuff and just hoping something happened? So really the process is what I'm focused on, and just kind of doing the work, doing the right things, and like those are the small wins that you can, check off.
And I think the other big thing you're talking about is, I mean, ultimately you did the swim and you're posting ultimately the times that you wanted to hit, but there are plenty of training runs where you didn't. So I think it's about looking at the macro, not the micro, pulling back the lens. And when it comes to speech, similarly, not judging yourself on one moment, one word, one conversation, giving yourself a bit of a wider lens, just like the stock market, just like training. I think a lot of speech therapy, and I'll just go on a little bit of a uh, moment here, but I think that another shift that I think about in what we did together, and I'll even share two things that you shared as goals for yourself that I think are very striking. People get focused on techniques. Did you do the technique? Did you practice the technique? The person comes back, I didn't do the technique this week. I know I should have, but I didn't do my homework. I didn't do the technique. At the end of the day, whatever quote unquote technique, whether it's physical speech motor stuff, whether it's self-care, whether it's working on self-talk and how you beat yourself up or encourage yourself, or whatever it is, that's only a means to an end. The end is what's important. And when we sat down, we did that exercise and I said, what do you really want? You said things like, I want to go networking events for jobs and feel like comfortable mixing and mingling and showing my true self. You talked about that would be like an emotional thing potentially. And then you also talked about being on the phone and a family member is going to the supermarket and you want to get a certain leafy green. And that leafy green is very specific. It's arugula, you know. Greg
Arugula.
Pandise liked arugula. And that was not the easiest leafy green to say. And it was a pretty crummy feeling on the one hand, not to say it, on the other hand, to say it and get so stuck on it. And so there was a place where maybe you chose to do some physical, drilling of a behavior and making it easier to kind of glide through that, while at the same time not feeling compelled or shamed to do that. It became just another tool on your tool belt. So I think
Yeah.
pulling back, big frame, getting real. The goals should be like real life, and ultimately having many tools that you can turn to. That's, I think you were just a lesson in that.
Mhm.
What would you say was what opened up for you? What do you feel you started doing differently or thinking differently or feeling differently after the work that we did together?
I think giving myself credit for like small wins. Um, I think that was a big one. And kind of like you said, the macro view. I think it's almost both though. I think it's the macro is obviously the big picture. And then I think getting really, really micro, like minute to minute, because I feel like, if I lump things together in like days or weeks, right? You know, if you look at a whole day, let's say you're really good at stuttering that day. You might say, oh, yeah, this day I was really good at stuttering, which is not good for, you know, which is not good for fluent speech. But if you kind of reframe, say, yeah, maybe, you know, there was 100 times where I stuttered or I didn't really say or do the things that I wanted to do because of the way that I was thinking. You could reframe, be like, oh, well, here's 5 times that I didn't do that. And
Yeah,
so there's 5 more wins. So
that's
this
right.
day was great. This was awesome. I got 5 more wins today. And
And
tomorrow maybe
your
I'll get
percentage
6.
went up from yesterday. That's right. Because
Yeah. And
yesterday was
so
3 out of 5.
maybe tomorrow I'll get 6. Or maybe in the next, 5 minutes I'll get a win. Right.
I think
Um,
recognizing that like Ted Williams batted for something, Michael Jordan shot under 50% from the field. These are the
yeah.
greatest of all time, and they missed more than they hit, but they kept swinging, and they still looked at fractional percentages of increased improvement, even though statistically reality tells you you're going to miss more shots than you hit. But I
Yeah.
remember this gamification of it, like day to day. It's not about perfection, but it's about improvement. It's about taking more risks and showing up more freely more of the time, and recognizing that sometimes you won't. And that's okay too. That's human.
Yeah. And I think that kind of day to day or, that's kind of like the process, right? Like I could sit there and be like, okay, today, like I can't stutter, I can't block on anything. Like that's not realistic. Like to do anything 100% is, virtually impossible. But, and this is something that I do sometimes. I used to do it very consistently. I would just make like a little like um I would make a tally on like my notepads whenever I said a word that, you know, I would have listed as hard to say, or I put myself out there. If it was, call it networking, or if there was someone new in the office, I walk up, introduce myself. Like that's a small win. So even if that day is not the best, I can look at this pad and say, great, well, I have 10 wins today. And like it kind of makes the rest go away.
When we were
Um,
talking, I remember a lot of things that we did and that we talked about. And I actually remember that we got to what you're talking about now because you were feeling a little bit like things were fluffy. And it was very important to me, and I think it should be important to every therapist or guide or coach, that the player, the driver, the person who you're trying to be supportive to, that their experience, first of all, is validated. And if something's not working for them, figuring out how to make it work. But it shouldn't be that the guide is saying, "Oh no, you're doing great. You're doing better because I said so, because I'm measuring something you don't understand, but trust me." No. So we introduced this idea of like making it concrete, and you really hooked into that. And then you had a very interesting challenge. You said, "Well, listen, I'm networking in finance. Again, not fluffy." And they're looking at the resumes and then setting up interviews. What do I do with the stutter? Because if I do everything digitally, I present a certain way. And then if I show up for the interview and I'm stuttering, uh-oh. And I put out a very crazy idea at the time. And I was wondering if you could take us through that story, because I wonder how it hit you when I presented it to you. And then I remember getting a phone call from you 2 years later.
yeah, you said to put it on my resume that I stuttered. And to get a bit more granular, not as a line like, you know, person who stutters, for these years. But, we found a unique way to kind of make it, um, you know, valuable. because for the people who stutter out there, right, stuttering is something that you're going to learn from, immensely, and it's something that really makes you unique, and gives you a unique perspective. But what you helped me do is you were like, let's get on your resume. So for, community service, like you should be, a peer mentor or do something like that. So it's on your resume and they see that there. And I've actually, I've gotten questions about it.
How did it
And
hit you when I
all been
put that
positive.
out there at the time? Do you remember the
I did
feeling?
not, I did not want to do that. I did not want to do that at all.
How long did it take to, because then you called me about 2 years. I think we talked about that. And I think actually you still had a runway because you were going off to grad school. You were going for your MBA after we were working together, as I recall.
Yeah.
So I think I planted the seed. I knew it was a wild idea. I also insisted that you can't lie. So you got to start like being available to be a mentor. And I paired you up with a teenager who was like, oh my gosh, a guy who played NCAA lacrosse is going to come have a catch with me. And he stutters. This is the coolest thing ever. So it was legit. And then 2 years later, you called me. So maybe fill in what happened between like, I don't like that idea to that phone call.
Yeah. I mean, basically I put it on my resume and it became, something that I think, people who stutter will kind of vibe with, like, it actually allowed me to kind of tell my story and be able to show like those values that I learned from my speech. Um, but I actually have a pretty funny story about it. I was interviewing, and this person, they're going through the resume, pretty standard stuff, job experience, school, and they get to the bottom, they're like, oh, community service. Wow, you work with, kids who stutter and you're a mentor. That's so unique. Like I've never heard of anyone doing that, but that is like that's the worst thing ever. Like that's got to be so terrible for those kids. Like their lives are really, I'm kind of giving a little more fluff, but basically like, oh, like those people are really in trouble, like all this stuff. And I was like, well, actually, I stutter and that's why I work with them. And she was like, oh, well, you sounded good on the phone. I was like, thanks. doesn't doesn't change much. But even being like having the courage to like stop her and say that was like a win. I'm pretty sure I made a little tally mark for that because I was able to kind of tell my story.
And I think the power of that moment is both a win and a check for you, but it's also a moment of being a champion for someone else who's going to have that interview and someone else who's going to be otherwise passed over or, unfairly judged and misperceived. And so I think also for anyone who's out there, anytime you can show up authentically and set the record straight, whether it's about stuttering, anti-Semitism, racism, whatever, when you can set the record straight, it's for your own dignity. It's a breakthrough for you, but it also puts you in a position to open a door for someone behind you because they might not have that courage. They might not have that opportunity. So I think to recognize the significance, it's a double check,
Double check.
double check it, double check it. And then you call me 2 years later. It seems like that could have been the one. Was that the one that you got that job?
Yeah, yeah.
I was running. How ironic is that? I was on a run and you called me, and what can I say? I don't think you would do this, but I picked up my phone while I was running, got the earbuds on. I'm like, oh wow, Greg Pandise. You're like, hey, it's Greg. Do you remember me? I'm like, is that all it was? Like you don't think I would remember you? Like arugula and cold brew and avocado toast. Come on, man.
Yeah, man.
That was the most exciting thing. And yeah, I think you told me that even the company elevated the resumes that had community service, that they valued that, and it was like the job you wanted most. It was amazing. Amazing. So I know that oh boy, when did you become athletic? I want to get to the athleticism piece and fitness. Time flies when you're having fun, and I'm having fun. So I want to talk about like you as an athlete and what that's done for you and how you feel it relates to how you operate, how you function, how you optimize your strongest self, and if and how that relates to stuttering. And then those lessons. I know you feel there's some really valuable lessons you want to share about what stuttering has revealed for you, brought out of you.
Mhm.
So when did you become an athlete? When did you recognize that you were?
I mean, pretty early on. I mostly played football. I picked up lacrosse maybe like third or fourth grade when my town got a program. Um, and then through high school, I was still pretty competitive in sports with football and lacrosse. I actually really wanted to play football, but I ended up getting injured my junior year. So I couldn't really play my senior year. Um, and so I kind of was like, yeah, I like lacrosse too. So we'll do that. But
Bouncing
football was
back,
really my main thing.
adapting, bouncing back, adaptation.
Adapting. Yeah, adapting. And then I think the biggest things that I learned from sports and that pertain to my speech is I kind of maybe because I wasn't the most vocal leader, I learned how to lead in different ways. So that's with, work ethic, being positive, and I think people seeing you work and just kind of how you carry yourself can really do a lot. And
Was that conscious or just looking back? That's the way you see it. Or was it conscious in those years?
it was, yeah, yep. It was conscious. It was like, cool, I'm not going to give the, rah rah speech. I'm going to be like hardest working guy so people know that, I'm here to lead.
Kobe Bryant style, showing up at the gym 5:30 in the morning. They're waking up and you've already finished your first workout.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, the way, and that was a positive, but I also kind of use that as a crutch, right? Because I learned how to, you know, um, show value without being vocal,
Hmm.
and so that almost became a crutch. But now I kind of realize that communication is largely nonverbal. So how you stand, how you carry yourself, what you do with your hands, where you look, a lot of those like physical stuttering cues. Um, I think I learned a lot from that in sports, right? So like, you know, the corniest line is like, don't show that you're, that you're tired or that you're hurt. Stand up tall, right? And so, and you actually helped me kind of realize that. You were like, I mean, well, what are some physical things that you do?
Hmm.
And a lot of them weren't stuttering. A lot of them were looking down, were, you know, touching my face, doing things like that, and being able to kind of be conscious of that, have someone let you know that that's happening and work on that. I think that's a big deal.
And again, Greg, just sincerely thank you because I remember doing that with you. And from that conversation, the exercise that's in the ebook right now came from the conversation and notes that I have from what we did together of, and it's very important that nobody else does this for someone, but to take someone through the process of kind of reflecting and being self-aware. What does it look like when I stutter? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? It's a
Yeah.
very personal inventory to kind of like do that. You have to be in a good place and have a good vibe with yourself and with whoever you're going to share it with. So don't impose it on someone. But by doing that, then you can really see, well, which part of this is stutter, which is beyond my control. It's something I have to accept. I cannot change. And which of these things, with courage, I could change. Like there's no reason I have to look away. It
Yeah.
takes guts. It's not easy. It's a learned behavior. It's also driven by understandable social emotional reasons, but it opens things up. Yeah, there's no reason a person who stutters can't be a great communicator. But if you do all the things that strip away all the good nonverbal language, it's hard to be a great communicator if you don't leverage some of the strengths that you have. And so you
Yeah.
don't have to be a smooth talker, but if you're engaging with your body language, as you said, it kind of is a much stronger signal than the speech signal even. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my favorite kind of term or concept, right? You can stutter, you don't have to be fluent, and you can be a great, 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 a great communicator. You
That
can
was better
stutter and be a
said.
great
That was
communicator.
better said than I could say it. See, if I had said that, it wouldn't resonate the same. But you
Yeah.
just put like big underline and massive exclamation point, and that's why these conversations are powerful, for real.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and you also shared with me, as a person who stutters, besides the work ethic and besides recognizing how you could project strength and leadership even when you felt insecure in other things, which is also important for people to recognize. Like when you're watching championship, right now we got the World Cup going on. You watch these athletes, they all put on their pants one leg at a time, right? Like it's very important to remember that. And so I looked at Greg coming in and I was like, this guy is like, wow. And it took a lot for me not to dress him down, but just to recognize like I have things I'm good at. I have things I'm a little bit shaky on. He's got things he's exceptional at, clearly, and he's also got things he's shaky on. We're both human. Boom.
Yeah.
We're on level field.
Yeah.
But what are those things about fitness that for you, just as a guy operating in personal life, communication life, work life, what does fitness look like and mean to you? And how do you think it's an important ingredient in like how you optimize your day to day?
Yeah. I mean, at a surface level, it's something fun to do that's, you know, good for you and makes me feel good. But really what I enjoy is like the structure and kind of the improvement that you can make. So getting back to that, process. Like I signed up for my first ultra marathon probably like a year ago around this time, and that was in May of 2021. And the reason I signed up, I wasn't a runner, you know. I didn't do much. I ran a little bit, but I wasn't
I
really
know.
much of a runner.
I told you I was running, and at the time you were seduced into it because you saw me doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you just blew me by, Here I am doing my 5K and you're like doing it 55.
I so I signed up because I wanted to have like a training plan, and I didn't know what else I could like plan for. Um because I would like get bored. I'd like lose structure because I didn't have like a process. I was just doing stuff. There was no there was no macro goal, and there was no day-to-day micro that I could do. Right. It was just like, yeah, go to the gym, work out, you do what you want. Oh yeah, I might run today. And then it just got kind of like exhausting. And it was like, I'm not doing anything. Like, why am I doing this? Is this even worth my time if I'm not doing it for anything? So I decided to put something on the calendar and get a training plan. And to me, it's just really enjoyable to have, small workouts that you can check off. And then for me, it holds me accountable to be like, cool, if I don't do this workout, then you know that's going to chip away at my kind of end goal or the macro goal.
And does it bleed into the other parts of your day?
Yeah, 100%. One, try not to make work the hardest thing in your life. I mean, two, it just makes me feel better, right? Starting my day, getting the blood moving. And then just taking that kind of, more, I guess, regimented, process driven mentality to, all parts of my life, whether that be work, whether that be, personally, right? Like, bad things happen, but you just gotta keep chugging along. You just gotta do all the right things. And I really think, and I've kind of proven this to myself. Whether I prove that to anyone else, I don't really care. I proved it to myself that, if you stay positive, stick with the process, um, and kind of manifest things right through that process, you know, at least for me, things have kind of happened. I've gotten the promotions that I've wanted. I've been able to do the races I've wanted. I'm kind of doing all these things that I've, always wanted to do. And to me, it just came down to like making a choice and like really putting yourself out there and not being afraid to fail. And that's why I like the process, because you can fail and you're still doing the right things.
You just tied it all together, the big picture, the process, and the goal. You need both, because without the goal, you felt like you didn't have something you were shooting for. But on
Hmm.
the other hand, it's about focusing day to day. Are you doing the things that are going to get you there? It's not about, I did it, I didn't do it, I'm a success, I'm a failure today. It's the process. But having realistic goals, and you talked about earlier, I loved it. You said, if you set the goal today, I'm going to swim this pace, this distance, and you don't do it, it's like, can't give yourself a check. So
Yeah.
it'd just be poor goal setting. So one of the other things that I think is invisible with what you've done is setting good goals for yourself that you keep pushing. But it's not like you said, uh, tomorrow I'm going to close, $1 billion in sales. That's just not, I mean, I don't know what you're doing in sales, but setting good goals is very important because frustration is a function of expectation. If you set your goals far too high, you're setting yourself up to be frustrated. So it's finding those realistic wins just beyond your reach and doing things that'll get you there, and then just doing the work. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
what are some takeaways or things that stuttering has revealed or brought out for you in terms of yourself, your family, your life?
Yeah. I really loved, you know, the speech therapy process with you. Um, my father was pretty involved with that. And it was, for me, it was great to learn what he was feeling as well.
And you
And
were
so
you
that,
were post college at that point, which I just want to
yeah,
highlight. Like you were not a young man.
no, I was like 23. Yeah.
Yeah, and you walked in the first day with your dad, and we had a little bit of a powwow together.
Hmm.
And so you're saying it was helpful to you to hear what he was feeling.
Yeah. And it was so like refreshing. I feel like there was a weight lifted off me to hear like, my dad, who I hope that he loves me and cares about me, um, was kind of feeling for me. And like, as a person who stutters, you think you're completely, alone. Um, he obviously doesn't know exactly how I'm feeling, but just the fact that there's people that, care about me that feel this way, like it's not only motivating, but it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit because, you know, I was lucky to have, a support group that wasn't putting a ton of pressure on me. It wasn't like, oh, well, Greg shouldn't stutter, right? Um, I was really blessed to have a support group that was like, yeah, I mean, when Greg stutters, like, I can see how much, it can change his day or it can put him down. And that's tough for me to see. And so hearing that was really great.
And I remember in the other side how grateful your dad was to kind of get the inside track because
Hmm.
otherwise, as a loved one, you only see the surface. You only see what's above the tip of the iceberg. You don't see what's beneath the surface, which could be a lot of stuff that's hard or it could be a lot of stuff that's super impressive, but you don't know because you can't get on the insides till someone shares that with you. And obviously, the only way someone can share is if they feel there's a space, a time, a listener.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super powerful.
Yeah.
What other, you talked about lessons learned from stuttering that can translate to other parts of life. I think that was something that you wanted to reflect on.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the process stuff and like the small wins um really translates well. And then obviously being a person who stutters, you realize that people have a different layer that you might not see. And that's what I'm really grateful for. And I always knew it a little bit, but I was kind of this like calloused kind of guy who was like, no one's got it worse than me, right? Which is just not true at all. Like everyone deals with things. And like you said, right? You're good at some things. I'm good at some things. Nobody's perfect. Um, and so that is, that's really that's really what I learned and what I kind of took away from it.
Awesome. So one last question would be if we
Mhm.
had if there was like help me out here, I'm blanking on the word, billboard. If there was a billboard that could have like a one-liner from Greg Pandise for the world, do you have something you'd want to stick up there?
I think everyone they should give themselves credit, right? Realize what you do well. And I'm not saying that like, hey, go tell everyone everything you do, but take note for yourself, right? If you're having a bad day, realize there was definitely a few good things that you did that day and kind of be grateful for a few things and give yourself credit.
If you're listening, those are wise words. I invite you to pick up your right hand next to your face, bring it across your body. So now it's facing the other shoulder, and then just tap that other shoulder. And that's a great exercise. Gives your all selves a pat on the back because whatever you woke up to today, and this was something that Greg shared, asked about a promotion, and they said, well, what's something hard that you've had to deal with? Do you want to say it or you want me to paraphrase?
Yeah, I
You said,
mean, I I basically said, I stutter. So taking this job was difficult for me to do on, a personal level. And now I can wake up every day. And yeah, I mean, it's a challenge and just getting on the phones and getting to work, right? That's probably the hardest part, but the rest of it comparatively is pretty easy.
so everybody's getting up, and if you're facing the hard things and you're not running away, you're already winning. And it's building a muscle that's going to make you a better person and a valuable friend, partner, colleague. So get out there and do your best. And thank you, Greg, for this. This was such a sweet, honest, open, valuable conversation. Deeply
Thank
grateful.
you. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate the time.
Awesome.
This is great. Thanks.